Hey guys, welcome back to 4 Geeks by Geeks, the place where geeks come to geek out. As always, I am Boser, and this is your Monday night Geek Out Sesh. Thanks for being here, you guys. I have been off, oh my god, 2 weeks. It's been 2 weeks since our last Geek Out Sesh, and I feel like my soul is crippling. And so this is just like waters of life. Thank you for being here. If this is your very first Geek Out Sesh, you can join us live here on Twitch, Monday nights, 8:30 Eastern Standard, or you can join after the fact on podcast or YouTube channel, 4 Geeks by Geeks. Check it out. And for those listening after the fact, thank you. Go ahead and tell your friends. Come by on a Monday night where you can join the live Twitch chat. You can talk to our guests live, and that's what we're doing tonight. But before we get any further, I do want to let you know that we have a question of the day in honor of Valentine's Day. Happy Valentine's Day, everybody. I want to know what is the characteristic that is a must for a romantic partner for you? Because we all have different things that we need in that partner. And so that's going to be my very first question for my guest. So I hope she's thinking about it. Speaking of my guest, if you haven't met her already in a past Geek Out Sesh, because she has been back, she is returning, and I'm really excited because we had such a great time the very first time. But I'm going to ask her that first question as soon as she gets in. But I want to know from you, what's a characteristic that is a must for a romantic partner? For me, it's one of the very biggest things that I had to find in my wife. She wasn't getting any further unless she had a great sense of humor. And I really needed her to make me laugh. And she does. She makes me laugh every day. Honestly, she's the funniest person I know. She's way funnier than me, if you can believe it. It's possible, and she is it. That's why I married her. But like I said, it's been 2 weeks, and I'm just aching. So I don't want to put it off anymore. I see you in the chat, so thank you. But we're gonna get right to it. These properties aren't right. I'm working on a new system. I'm just noticing my alignment's a little off, but whatever. We're going to make it work. It's fine. It's fine. But please give it up. I want everybody to drop some emojis, drop some fires. Let us hear you roar for my friend, Danielle M. Orsino. Say hello, Danielle.
Hello, Geeks. How are you? I'm so happy to be here.
It's so great to see you again.
How are you?
I'm great.
It's been a while.
It feels like it's been a while, but also we talk so often on social media.
Yes, I was there for your Christmas wrapping party.
You were.
Where I watched you wrap gifts.
That's what we do nowadays. That's the goodness that's happening. But we just interact so often, and that's what I love about you is ever since we found each other's channels, we just continue to geek out with each other, and I think that's so much fun.
I enjoy it very much, and I'm happy to be here. And actually, I'm thrilled to be here.
You were looking like a queen tonight.
I had to bring the Aurora realness and bring it straight from the cover of the second book just for you.
The second book? You mean this book?
That book, yes.
This signed book with... Oh, wait, where is it?
Yes.
Where is it? There she is.
The third page in.
There she is. That's right. Yes. I got a signed copy, y'all. Perks.
Yes, you did.
Perks to being a Twitch streamer.
Exactly. I brought it just for you.
Well, I appreciate that, and I appreciate you being on the show, and I appreciate you being such a great friend to the geeks in the channel for quite some time now. But my first question, before we jump into tonight's Geek Out Sesh, I want to know, what is that characteristic that's a must for a romantic partner for you?
Patience, because there's a lot of voices in this head. So you have to really have some patience to deal with it as a creative person. I'm sure you know. Yeah, an author's a pain in the ass to deal with. I'll be honest with you. You have to have patience because I write alone, I create alone. So I'm up in my cave writing, and sometimes you hear me yelling at the computer. No, they wouldn't do that. Why am I writing that? And then I got to back up. So just don't come in there. Just leave that alone. So yeah, you have to be patient with me because, like I said, a lot of voices in here. It's a Harley Quinn moment going on.
Well, with so many
Just,
characters that you've created living their lives inside your head, I can only imagine how many voices you're hearing. Do they keep you up at night?
Yes. 100%. Yes. Yes. I've had characters like in the middle of the night decide they're going to interrupt and be like, no, go write my story right now. I had one character who you will meet in book 3, where literally it was like 3 a.m. and the song Cherry Bomb just started going off in my head. And this little blonde character who was about 6 years old, Indiga, just skipping rope like through my head and just was like, get up. I'm now in the series. Go write my story. And she just out of nowhere, she came up. And it was kind of like that Eloise in the plaza.
Sure.
And she just got up and was like, my nickname is Little Big Mouth. And I'm just going to like rock this whole story and get up. And at 3 a.m. I was literally like writing down and going, okay. And she was just dictating to me. She's like, I do this. And my best friend is named E. And this is what I do. And I was just sitting there going, okay, all right, I got it. All right, honey, I got you. And she was playing Cherry Bomb. That was the song that was going on in my head. And I'm like, all right, okay. And I just sat there writing, going, all right, yep, gotcha. She's like, and I don't do this, I say this. And I'm like, all right, yep.
So I mean this with absolute respect, because I am not a writer, and I have no idea what it's like to be in the mind of a writer. But I ask this with respect. Are you ever worried that you're dealing with a form of psychosis?
Oh, yeah. No, there are times my father will, like, sometimes when I talk to him about it, he's like, you crazy. Like, he just looks at me
You're
like,
nuts.
he's like, there's something like, he's like, how do you come up with it? And there's a chance my dad's watching right now, so I'm just going to say, hi, Dad, and it's my stepmother's birthday today, so hi, Miko, happy birthday, just in case they actually figured out how Twitch works. Hi, guys.
There you go. Yeah, they can always watch it back on YouTube or the podcast.
Yeah. Happy birthday.
Happy birthday,
no, there
Miko.
are times where they're like, you're crazy. And yeah, there are times where I think like maybe I'm losing it. There's a slight chance I read way too many comic books. And yeah, maybe Batman, Robin, Wonder Woman, and all the TV shows I watched as a kid finally have done their damage. And I've lost it and cracked. There's a little piece of me every now and then that thinks so. Yeah, when moments like that happen, yeah, definitely. I definitely think I've lost it.
Well, for those who don't know you've lost it, or don't even know who you are or what you have done, if they missed the first Geek Out Sesh, give us a quick breakdown of who you are and what the hell you're doing.
My name is Danielle, and I actually write a fantasy series called Birth of the Fae, which retells the origins of the Fae or fairies, as many of us know, but I took it out of your normal, maybe Celtic religion, as most people know, the Celtic origins, and I have broken it down into more of a new retelling and taken it from that they are angels who were locked out of heaven. They did not get involved. One side did not get involved in the war between God and Lucifer, and another side did, and they found that they can no longer go home to the Shining Kingdom, so they are here on Earth, and they become what we know as our polytheistic gods and goddesses of Roman, Greek, Egyptian, pagan religions. And instead, they are here to get human worship and just live amongst us. And from there, we have their wars, their toils, everything that goes on. They help out European monarchs, and then they kind of have their own things going on. And there's dragons and mermaids and everything else that happens. So it's a fun series, and it was inspired by a patient when I was a nurse who needed a distraction while he was undergoing IV treatment, and I told him a story, and this was born from it.
That's my favorite part. That's what I tell people all the time whenever they ask, like, who are you interviewing this week? I'm like, oh my God, she's an amazing woman, and she wrote this book, and it was all born out of a story that she told a patient one time. It's amazing. Oh, thank you for the gift sub, Alex, to JB Shoop. That's amazing. I just noticed the alerts are different. They're changed. So sorry about that, but we'll get the old ones back. That was it's like you've done these interviews 1,000 times. That was so succinct.
And I still screw them up. So here, go figure.
But the first time we talked, we were really talking about the very first book. And that was, Now help me figure out the timeline, because either you cranked out 2 books real fast, or
I've written I've written right now 7 books are finished. They're going through editing, but I finished 7.
Holy shit! Of the book of Birth of the Fae series.
Yes, 7 are done.
Oh
so
man!
I'm with Four Horsemen Publications. I was in the middle of transitioning when we spoke. So Four Horsemen Publications picked me up. So I switched from my last publisher to Four Horsemen, who, how could I not go with somebody named Four Horsemen Publications?
Right. I noticed that. I'm like, oh, that's so fitting, actually.
Yeah, exactly. When you're on a blasphemy list and somebody named Four Horsemen pick you up, it seems like, kind of simpatico right there. So I went with them, and I have already written the 7. I think I might be on 8. Yeah, no, I finished 8. 8 altogether, because I'm on 9. So I finished 8, and they've been sitting there, and I was like, okay, I don't know what to do. They're edited. So Four Horsemen, I still have to go through their editing process, but I've worked with my editor, Christina, and they're done. So we just have to kind of start to, get them out. But Four Horsemen has decided that because of my cosplay, I would go on the covers. So I still have to shoot the covers. And that's been part of the difference. And that's why they're going out. So they were nice enough, because I would never have thought, oh yes, let's put me on the covers. No.
Why wouldn't you think? You are so fitting. Look, that's her. Wearing the same dress she's wearing now.
Yes, I thought I'd pull out the same corset. This was made by Rainbow Corsetry, which was very sweet. She read a passage from the book and came up with the design. But no, I never thought, oh, I'm going to be on the cover of the book. No, that was all Erica and Val's idea, who are the CEOs of Four Horsemen. That was not my idea at all. They were the ones who were like, oh, we're going to use your cosplay, because they're cosplayers themselves.
Are they really?
We've got an idea. We're going to use your cosplay, because they're cosplayers themselves. They love cosplay.
Are they really?
So they go to the cons, everything. I saw Erica dressed did this amazing Gaston from Beauty and the Beast, and it was like, she showed me that immediately in one of our contract discussions. They have a podcast.
Cool.
That's how they met me. Was through a podcast. So it was really cool. But yeah, they decided to put me on the covers. That was not my idea at all. So now I've been shooting the covers for all the books.
Because you gotta love that the publishers get what you're doing, and they also they're geeks themselves, right?
Exactly, and they understood it, which was not something that what publishers yeah, sure, let's throw you on the cover. Most of them are like, let's get the stock photo, let's do it this, we're going with the formula. Who would be like, yeah, let's take the author. Sure, you want to wear a tail? Great, let's throw you on the cover. From a cosplaying standpoint, where are you going to find somebody like that?
Right.
They were just
throw you in a tail and topless.
Exactly. Yeah, we're not, because I was telling them, I'm like, because they asked me about it. I said, it was 100 degrees that day. I'm like, the pasties I was wearing melted off. And they were just like, we got Photoshop. We'll throw some extra hair. It'll be fine. They were like, we'll just put the lettering across. You'll be good. Don't worry about it. I'm like,
that's a lot of trust in your publisher.
I couldn't believe it. And then I'm like, well, what are we going to do for the next one? And they were like, yeah, we'll do the same thing. Don't worry about it. And they were just like, just keep going with it. So I was like, all right. And then I think on the 3rd cover, the original picture they picked, I was kind of like, I wanted more of a sword picture. They were like, all right, tell us which one. They were just like, yeah, all right, pick it.
That's really beautiful, actually.
They were like, yeah, let's go with that. I told them I wanted to make sure there was a dragon, because my illustrator, Pandy Van, I said, I want her work featured, because we worked so closely to get the dragons just right.
Yeah.
And I said, I want to make sure she's featured. She's an artist. She's worked so hard and so close with me. And they were like, all right, let's put a dragon on the cover.
And there's been a dragon on every cover so far.
There's been a dragon on every cover. Book 4 is the first time I share it with Jarvok. We found a Jarvok. His name is George.
Ooh.
He's amazing. And that'll be the first time there isn't a dragon. There's Jarvok instead. And so we're really excited about that. But then Pandy's getting her own dragon novella, so she gets a cover just of dragons. So we made it up to Pandy one way or the other.
So hold on. Back up a little bit. Back up a little bit.
Yes.
You said that you've now written 9 books. 3 are
I'm on number 9.
on
Yes.
number 9. 3 are published.
Yep.
The rest are in the works of getting edited and published, and the covers. What was the time span from writing Locked Out of Heaven, the first issue, all the way to, I guess you're not quite done with 9, but to today?
I wrote a lot of them all at the same time, not knowing how to write. So let me back this up. So I wrote them. If you could see, nobody would believe what I did because I hand wrote them, first of all, because I didn't know what the hell I was doing. So I'd pick up it and I would start writing.
What do you mean
and I didn't
hand
say
wrote, like with a pen and paper?
Yeah, because I didn't know what I was doing. So I would just like pick it up and start writing a scene.
Okay.
And I didn't sit there and be like, oh, chapter 1. No, that's not how it went. The very first one I wrote was for what will be book 7. And it was a scene where it takes place present day. Agent Graham, which is actually my patient's literary persona, is presenting his findings to the DOD.
Okay.
And I started writing it, and he was talking about the Fae, and then I went, oh, people aren't going to know who the Fae is. Okay, and I threw that one down, picked up another journal, and went, the Fae are, and I started writing that, and I went, oh, they're not going to know. Okay, hold on. And picked up another journal and went, King Jarvok, and originally Jarvok's name was Farzak.
Farzak?
Yes.
Okay.
But when I got to the computer, I was too dyslexic, and Jarvok came out literally in my head. He went, yeah, I like that name better. And I went, yeah, so do I. And that's how Jarvok, that's how he got his name. But that was once I hit the computer. And I started going, King Jarvok, leader of the Dark Fae. Wait a minute, how do you get the Dark Fae name? And I put that one down, picked up another one, and went, Power Brigade Angels. And that's literally how I started writing them. So there are journals everywhere with pieces of each book.
Mm-hmm.
And I would just start writing a scene. And when I got done with that scene or that chapter, I would just pick up another book and just move on to another one and start piecing it all together. And then when I filled up one book, I would go to the computer and then type it. And that was where the second editing process happened.
Got it.
And
wow, that sounds hard.
Start like layering it.
Right, because probably
that
pieces of this journal need to get in order here, but this piece needs to go in between those two.
Yeah. And I didn't know because I only set out to write one. That was my goal, was like, I'm just going to write one.
One book.
And I thought it was, the one that featured my patient. But the more I kept doing it, I'm like, oh, nobody's going to know what that means. So I better go back and write this.
Yeah.
And by the end of it, I was like, oh, I have all these pages. What do I do? So I just started chopping it, going, okay, this will be book 1. All right, this will be book 2. And I really only had 3. And then when I worked with my first editor, I shouldn't say my first good editor. Let me just say that, because I went through a lot of editors.
Sure.
My first good editor, he was like, this is a Game of Thrones book. He's like, this is a monster. Nobody's going to sit through this. He's like, it's great, but you got to cut this in half. So Locked Out of Heaven was literally books 1, 2, and 3, like, combined. He was like, you got to cut this in half.
Oh, okay.
So I cut it in half, and that's how I wound up with Locked Out of Heaven ending where it did. And then Thine Eyes of Mercy was books 2 and 3. I had to cut that in half because they were just monsters. And he's like, you don't have an audience. Nobody's going to hang around for 700 pages, Danielle.
Sure. Then your very first book.
But
what if it's really good, though?
Yeah, I was like, but don't they want to see how it ends? He's like, no, nobody's going to care. He's like, honestly, nobody's going to care, dude. He's like, this needs to get cut. And that's kind of how it started to work out. And even down to what is book 7 and 8, that was originally one big book. And they were like, he's like, even that. He's like, cut it. He's like, cut it in half, baby. He's like, we gotta work on this whole timing thing.
And that's so interesting because I got to the end of your second book, and I almost thought, you know what, this could be longer. I want to know what happens.
It was longer.
No, I wanted it to be even longer.
Yes, it was longer.
I want more in book 2.
I started to feel like I didn't want to stay at the party too long.
Sure.
I just wanted, I was like, you know what? So book 3 is already out, and I'm like, you know what? Let's just let's give everybody a chance to binge it, because I didn't want them to be like, oh my God, does this thing ever end?
Yeah.
I didn't want to be that one. So I'm like, it's okay. Let them, as entertainment, leave them wanting more.
Yeah. Well, Oddity in the chat says editing is the bane of his existence.
I'm right there with you.
He's one of our FGBG fam, and he's been editing our podcast for our D&D sessions. And oh my God, he's like, well, I'm an hour and a half in, and I've made 475 cuts, so that's great. Mm-hmm. Was there anything when you were editing that got left on the cutting room floor that maybe like when you went to open the book, you're like, oh shit, where'd that part go? I thought that was in there.
I've had scenes that I'm like, I should have left it in. I still have, there's some deleted scenes that I'm like, one day I think I'm going to go back and I'd like to do something. The original prologue from book 1 was left out, the first edition, and then the Four Horsemen allowed me to put it back in. And I was so happy that they let me put it back in, because it explained a lot more. And they're the ones who
you need the prologue.
They were the ones who said, put your prologues back in.
Yeah.
Because I originally took them all out. And they were like, no. Go back and put the prologues in.
No, I'm glad you did.
So I was like, okay, they get me. So there were some scenes that I was able to put in that were originally left out. So that was a big help. But I leave a lot of time jumps because I intend to go back with smaller novellas and fill in blanks. So that's why I specifically have time jumps. Okay.
That's already answering some of my questions later. Because for those that, if you've picked up Birth of the Fae, Locked Out of Heaven, the book 1, you'll know that it took place from almost like the creation of the earth and ended at the Red Sea when the creator / Queen Aurora parted the Red Sea and the Israelites crossed it. And then book 2, you skip ahead, like a couple thousand years to Queen Mary's reign in England in like 1554. And there was like so much in there, and there's been so much going on in the Vale where the Fae live, and this war that's been raging, and then the very start of the book, and that was interesting. At the start of the book, the Dark Fae, the Court of Light, and the Court of Dark are coming together for a peace treaty, and I'm like, wait, this is the beginning. What happens the rest of the book? But then it's those like really thin, I guess, binds of that treaty that are being tested throughout the rest of the book. So that was interesting the way that you did that. You kind of flipped it on its head. I would have thought, this should happen at the end. What are you doing?
You know what it is? I chose to go that direction because to me there have been so many Fae books, and even just Elven, and especially Lord of the Rings and things like that, where there's so much concentrated on the war and the battle.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, we kind of have seen that. But when was the last time you saw a monarch or a leader really contemplating, I'm going to go sign a treaty? How does this affect my kin? So I wanted to spend a little more time in Jarbok's head as he's sitting there thinking, I have to give in. And what does that mean for my kin, and why am I doing this? Because I started this war, and here it is, all this time has passed. It should have been quick. It's not. I have to go and give in. Like, what does that really mean to him? Because anybody can write a battle scene. We can write sweeping battle scenes, and that's all fine, well, and good. But I feel like Lord of the Rings set such a high bar, even Game of Thrones. There's been so many of them. It's just another battle scene. But let's get into somebody's head when they're really thinking, I got to go sign this treaty now.
Yeah.
Because that's not done a lot. And it gives me room as an author now to go back, and I can tell you little stories about what the war was like from different kin's point of view and different factions, where the war may have affected them differently. And we all know, okay, he's going to sign the treaty, but what leads up to it is totally different than a big sweeping battle scene.
Yeah.
It just gives me a little wiggle room in between that. So I thought it was just a different take, and I can always revisit it.
Yeah. No, that was really interesting. And then it did get to see a different side of the Fae story, because like you said, there's so much battle in book 1. And now, like, how do they deal with day to day? And now they're interacting straight with the human world. And I really like that King Henry VIII came waltzing into the Court of Light. And I was like, oh my God, he's not allowed there. What is he doing? Then he fucked himself over by being an ass.
Yep.
But let me just give or how about, can you give a quick, because we'll get into it a little more, but quick synopsis of what happens now in book 2.
In book 2, we see that the war has actually caused problems for both sides, that they must give in. But now what happens when the war is over, when the Fae have spent so much time playing war games? How do you go back to your normal life? And that's what we get to see is, okay, war is over, let's get back to normalcy, but what is normal? And once that happens, how do you heal those scars? Mm-hmm. And how do you fit back into your world? And so the Fae now have to do that and live within these rules that they have set with their treaty. And through that, Queen Mary enters the fold. And the Fae realize that while they were off playing their war games, the humans have moved on from them a little bit, and Christianity has taken over Europe. So paganism is not the biggest power anymore. Christianity is. So how do the Fae now deal with human worship? And how do you get your power back and still balance your treaty? And then Aurora has to deal with the fact that maybe she's got some old wounds concerning the Creator, and it's left her open to dealing with Mary in a way that wasn't so smart. Mm-hmm. And that put her kin at risk.
I really liked that bit that she put herself in a deal with Mary because she saw almost some of her own hurt and her own trauma, of like her own daddy issues in mm-hmm. Queen Mary as she has with her Creator. And I kind of resonated there. I'm like, oh my God, how many times now? Because, I've kind of got my own self locked out of heaven in a way. And I'm like, how many times am I bringing my own God issues into like my daily conversations, or anytime anytime someone brings up God at all, like I can already feel mm-hmm. that wall. Yep. And it just proves to me, it makes me really strongly believe that you have and are still feeling that kind of thing because your characters are feeling that. Can you speak on that? Like, you don't have to be as personal as you want to be, but where do your God daddy issues come from?
I don't have as many daddy issues. My dad is actually pretty awesome, but once again, hi Dad, you might be watching.
Your God daddy issues, not your real dad.
My
your dad's
God
great.
Daddy issues. Yeah. My God issues are, I do have them. I was raised Catholic. Mm-hmm. I went to, religious instruction school, all that. But I was always very fascinated with religion in general. Mm-hmm. And I had friends of different religions, and I always would go to their churches or whatever and try to understand it, because I always thought a God that takes attendance fascinated me. Like, how does he know?
Right.
That to me was always very, I don't know, it just was a weird concept. Like, how does he know that I'm here right now, or when I'm not here, or where am I, and why does that strike against me? And the thing I remember most is it was right before my confirmation. I was in 7th grade, and they gave us a book called Purgatory. And they made us read it, and it actually was like, okay, if you've committed a venial sin, it's 7 years in the white fire that you have to burn. And first of all, you cannot give 7th graders this book.
No.
So I sat there, and me being as anal as I am, sat there with my friend Jen, the one who inspired Lady Serena, and started adding up my venial sins. And I kept asking questions. Does this count as a venial sin? And they're saying, yeah. And by the end of it, I figured out how many thousands of years, tens of thousands, I'd be burning in the white fire. And I raised my hand and announced it. And Jen, Steve Burns, Don Dingy, never forget those names, were sitting next to me. And I just remembered Steve looked at me. He went, well, if Orsino's screwed, then the rest of us are definitely going to hell. And Jen just looked at me. She went, how many years you burning? And at that point, everybody was like, if Orsino's going, we're all going. And they had to call my dad because everybody started calculating how many years they were burning in this white fire. And they pulled me out. They called my dad, and my dad had to come get me. And and my dad's like, why are you making my kid read this book? And my dad was super religious. And so he's like driving me home, and I'm like, Dad, I'm sorry, but like I'm burning in the white fire for tens of thousands of years, and I'm only 13 years old. do you understand the damage I'm going to do by the time I'm your age?
You're right.
And I just pointed at him, and he was like, okay, we'll discuss this, but when we get home, we'll okay, you know? And I just kept, like, I was on this loop of just,
excuse me.
And
I wound up going, then my friend would invite me to, like, her Bible study class.
Yeah.
And it was the same thing, like, all the questions. I'm like, well, let's say you're an Air Force pilot. And I'm like, and you have a shot to, like, kill this person, but they're leading this. And it was always, like, these convoluted Looney Tunes scenarios I would have. I'm like, but your missile jammed, so now you got to kamikaze this. Is it suicide? And I would always come up with, and finally they'd call my dad and be like, you got to come get your kid again. She's asking those questions.
Talking to ourselves in circles, asking our religion to actually answer a real question.
And I was always like, and they were just like, okay. And there was like, what if you're on your way to confession and you get in a car crash and die? I'm like, is that a venial sin? Because you never got to confess your sin. And they were just like, come get your kid. Like, we can't just come get your kid.
You're asking too many questions.
Yeah, and that's what I was doing. And I would read the Bible like every night.
Right.
And highlight passages.
Yeah.
And then come back and be like, well, technically the Bible says it's not right for a man to lay with a man. But it doesn't say it's not right for two women to lay. And they would be like, well, they mean both. And I'm like,
that's not what it says.
Because in this page, I'm like, it says that it's this. And they were like, well, when they mean man, they mean everybody. I'm like, no.
No, they don't.
And I would go back and, like, I would have it highlighted.
Right.
With, like, stickies. And I'm like, so what's up with that? And I'm like, it's because it was written by men. I'm like, and in the time of Caligula, and I would start going off. And they were just like, come get your kid. And it would just be the next phone call to my dad. Come get your kid. Yeah, she's doing it again. And my dad would be like,
she's making too much sense around here.
He'd be like, what'd you say this time? I'm like, I just pointed out that they say it's wrong for two men to lay, but not two women because it was written by. He'd be like, all right, just stop going. Read what it, just, okay, we're done. I'm like, I'm just saying, you know. And he'd be like, just, okay, don't study religion, Danielle. Just stop. just stop. Because I was like, I was thinking, like, maybe I should study this stuff and really get to the bottom of things. He's like, no. So I think it just came from curiosity, just constantly asking questions and never getting the answer. There was nobody who would sit and talk to me. The answer was always the same, because I said so.
Right. You got to have faith. Just believe it. Believe there's an answer. We just can't have it.
Yeah, and I'm like, well, if that's the case, I'm like, why don't you believe me when I say the Loch Ness Monster exists?
Well, that's just crazy.
It's the same thing. Yeah, and I'm like, but it's the same thing. So I think it just came from that, just that natural curiosity of, I'm not saying it doesn't exist, I just want more.
Yeah, I just need answers. Just want to know more about how it makes some sense of this.
I just thought it was hypocritical on a lot of things.
Sure,
and I
of course
wanted
it is.
answers for the hypocrisy. And I still do. I don't get on anybody for their religion. Believe whatever you want to believe.
Right.
I'm not saying anything, but I don't believe, if you're telling me it's all loving, then why is it only loving for certain groups?
Right.
Like, that was, and even as a kid, that just, I was like, why is it good for some but not? Yeah, that doesn't make sense.
And I can almost feel all of this energy, like, pumped into the main character of Queen. Well, I guess in this book, not so much main character, but I think the driving force in a lot of these books, Queen Aurora. Oh, KJ Becker says, those aren't God issues, they're religion issues, which is a really good point. And I'm going to kind of push you on some of those and some of these questions, because I like that you've created this kind of lore in the Veil, and you've brought in, like, Christianity, and you kind of have a God creator in these books, but they don't quite look, I guess, the true nature of the creator that the Fae would know, that humans wouldn't, because they didn't come straight from the Shining Kingdom, is a little different than what they've built with Christianity. So, yes. like I said, we've kind of skipped a lot from the book of the time of Moses to Queen Mary. But my question is, where does Jesus fall in that? In the lore, does he exist?
We will, yes, that question will be answered in book 4. I did not skip Jesus, the Jesus factor, as I call it, will appear in book 4. I will discuss it more, and the Fae do get involved after Aurora's run-in with Moses. She does decree that the Fae should be staying away from all the prophets and try to keep them away. But one of the Fae decides, no, I've got to go. You know, when they hear of Jesus, they want to know, like, what's the deal? Is he the son? Is he not? So it is discussed much more in book 4, and I do take it head on, especially after being on 2 blasphemy lists. How could I not?
Right.
We go right in, and I do go right in on the Jesus factor.
Okay.
And I do actually have a chapter called Jesus, and then I do have a chapter called Religulous, and we just dive right in and go right after it. So I do, but it'll be in book 4 that it all kind of gels together.
Okay, well, I've got to keep reading then, because I'm really curious just to see how you incorporate all that, how you deal with that.
Yes, I answer that question completely on the different religions and how they play in. Because
it would seem to me, at least in the lore of your books, that the Fae really know the closest definition of God and what that is. So while humans are building Christianity and building religions, if we were to be able to ask Queen Aurora or King Jarvak, who is God and what is God, what would they say?
They would not acknowledge God as that. They would look and say, we know who the creator is, but God, we don't know who the God is that you speak of. To them, there is no God. There's a creator.
Okay.
But they would not acknowledge their creator as God, because to them, the creator is just somebody who abandoned them. So, they would look at and say, God, I don't know. Like, they would kind of laugh and say, keep praying and do what you do, silly human. But the creator is the person that stuck us here, the being that stuck us here and has turned his back on us. But, talk to Lucifer and then we'll talk a little more. They would kind of just make fun of it.
Okay. But it's interesting only because Becker and I have had kind of conversations like this. Like, she's in the chat about like the difference between religion and God. And nowadays, when you talk about God, a lot of us go right to like that Catholic God or that Christian God or that Baptist God. But it seems like the Fae would define it like the creator is so much bigger and more internal.
It's more of a universal energy.
Right. And like Alwyn, how do you say his name? The bishop?
Alwyn?
Bishop Alwyn. He kind of is a driving force of this book because he spends considerable time with Queen Mary
Marjorie.
And then her servant Marjorie, who became kind of his ward, I guess. But I can almost feel you teaching us about what like God really is or what the creator really means through Alwyn to Marjorie. Talk a little bit about that. Like, what would he teach to Marjorie?
I think Alwyn's purpose, and I think Alwyn and Marjorie are both teaching each other. Because for a while, Alwyn is an Earthborn Fae. He was not born of the Shiny Kingdom. So he has a very different view on everything. It's a little fresher. It's a little more organic.
Okay.
And he comes in with a different attitude. His whole thing is that he is not aware of how the humans view gods in general. And God, Christianity, and even the pagan gods. He is not aware that, okay, there are people out there that feel paganism is wrong. It's witchcraft. That's bad. And that to be a servant or to be poor means that their Christian God viewed them as lesser and they've done something bad. And so their God must be mad at them for putting them in this lower position.
Right.
So he's very taken back. How could they think this way? And that they must have such low self-esteem. And so he's very upset by all of this, and he wants them to know there's nobody out there that deserves to be in a bad position. You didn't put yourself in there for a bad reason. You don't deserve this. There's magic within you. There's light within you, and everything in the universe is in you. There's a piece of stardust. There's a piece of the celestial heavens in you, and you can rise up. You can bring yourself out of these positions, but nobody puts you there. So he wants to teach her that, and she's teaching him that just because you see us for a moment, as a god. When he sees his followers, they're on their best behavior, but they might be acting like total assholes when he's not around.
Mm-hmm.
So they're both teaching each other about different sides. And so I think in a way it's a very symbiotic relationship.
Yeah.
And he's learning more that as his responsibility as a god, since he shows up to a lot of his pagan cults as Belenos and different forms, maybe he should be breaking bread and spending a little more time there, and because they're giving him worship. So he realizes there's probably more to this whole god thing, and I should be spending some time and kind of watching them, because he doesn't want them to be thinking the same thing, like, oh, if I have a bad day, it's because Belenos doesn't like me today. That's the last thing Ogwyn would ever want. So he's kind of getting more involved in seeing that being a god has a lot of responsibility. It's not just about being worshipped. So he's really taking that in, and Marjorie's teaching that.
Yeah.
So I think it's a special thing.
Yeah. We've got some good stuff happening in the chat, and just in connection to what you're saying. Like KJ Becker dropped a David Bowie quote that religion is for those afraid of going to hell. Spirituality is for those who have already been there. And
yes,
she wants to be friends with you. And I kind of knew
Anytime.
that. Becker, I knew that you were going to enjoy this chat. And I actually know that you would enjoy these books. And if these are books that you would like, use that command book. And it'll take you a link straight to the Birth of the Fae line. And you can grab all the books that are available. I just read number 2, which is really interesting. And it feels like all those things that you were just saying, I feel like book 2 kind of solidifies like that universal energy. And you talk a lot more about chakras aligning and crystals and the power of what they can do. Which a lot of people, I guess I'm making generalizations. I guess that's why I'm sorry. I'm talking in circles because I have so many like questions I'm pulling from. That's why I asked first how the Fae would define God, because in our Western society, I think they would define it very differently. But a lot of people I've talked to, like Becker, would define God as like the universal stardust within all of us. And it's just like finding the chakras. And so I was just kind of taken aback that that's where they lean. And I was interested to hear more about kind of your thoughts on where did you get all these ideas on the chakras and the crystals, and what's your background in that?
I've studied yoga for a long time. I always thought the chakras was an interesting piece. And from studying martial arts, I think it's all kind of the same in a weird way. We always talk about finding your center and where your power comes from, and breathing and centering and all that stuff. And when I've done yoga, it's all the same, the chakras. So I think centering yourself, whenever we're gathering our power, even like before we did breaks, it was always about, centering and breathing and everything. So I thought the Fae would be in tune with that. That just seems like a natural progression. And the earth has its own set of chakras. So out of all the beings I could think of, I would think the Fae would be in tune with the earth's chakras. So I thought meshing them seemed to make a lot of sense for me. And I don't know if other authors who write about the Fae believe that or not. I'm not 100% sure. But, when you start kind of going through Kabbalah and all that, and I'm not going to get into the whole Madonna Kabbalah thing or the religious Kabbalah thing, but, the chakras all line up with it. So it just seemed like a natural blend of it. So to me, that made a lot of sense when dealing with elemental magic. And the chakras line up with the elements. So like I said, with me, that seemed to be a natural progression.
Sure. Yeah.
When I was trying to figure out the magical systems. And in upcoming books, I discuss like the healers dealing with the chakras, and they use the chakras to define where they're at. Like, a certain level of chakras is a tonic girl, a tincture, they see chakras at a certain level, auras, that kind of thing. So I use that as my basis and built up from there. Because I would think if your chakras are lined up in balance, then you should be able to open it up and tap into everything that, you know, you have to offer.
Right. Like if your chakras are aligned with, especially with the earth chakras, then the elements are just right there for your disposal.
Right. That's how I saw it.
Interesting. We got some people tuning in about the must and the partner, and Oceana says, hi. Oddity says Oceana is the ideal partner. Ooh. No, just kidding, Oddity. I know you're just saying hi. KJ Becker said it's a must to be on the same wavelength/frequency so that communication isn't hard. Do you believe that in your day-to-day life?
Oh, yes. Communication, I think 110%. Communication is key. I have to be able to say what I feel, but there's always a caveat, because I think nowadays I've noticed, and I don't know, maybe everybody else can kind of chime in on this. Mm-hmm. I think sometimes people kind of go, I'm just being honest, and they just kind of say whatever they want.
Sure.
And sometimes it's not the nicest.
Sure.
And then it's just like, well, that's just being me. I'm just being honest, whether you can take it or not.
Just doing me, so living the honey.
Yeah. You know, and I think it's like,
no, you're just being rude.
Just being a jerk.
Yeah.
So I think communication and having that tact is key. So I agree.
I have a question about why you started book 2 in the time that you did, because like you skipped so much history. Why land here in the time of King Henry VIII into Queen Mary?
I always liked, I mean, a lot of people are obsessed with the Tudors, and I get it. Mm-hmm. But Elizabethan times, there's been a lot done on Queen Elizabeth. Obviously, there's been a lot done on King Henry. But Queen Mary, there was this weird spot where there wasn't a lot on her. And I thought she was really interesting. Bloody Mary, I mean, you know, right there, you kind of have my attention. So I thought it was just an interesting time frame where I could go in a bunch of different ways.
Okay.
And I loved her whole phantom pregnancy. I just thought that was like really kind of cool.
And that's historically accurate, right?
Yes. She had a phantom pregnancy. She walked around saying she was pregnant. Like that was all that birth date, all of that, 100% true. So I thought, as a nurse, I was like, I could really have some fun with that.
Yeah.
So I thought I could play with that a little bit. The time frame, I wanted to give myself a really good cushion to do novellas in between. And I had some ideas already.
Oh, okay.
So I wanted to have a little bit of cushion. You know, I have like the Battle of Secor Valley that takes place before that, the Battle of Dristan. So there's some other battles that have taken place in between the two books that I intend to write on. I'm actually already writing a novella right now that takes place between that.
So you just wanted to create some more space for the story to take all the different paths that it could.
Yeah, there's different characters I want to kind of do. And I wanted a little bit of, like I said, a little cushion. And I do like Queen Mary. I just think there's a lot to that time frame.
Is this, I'm pulling out something that you sent when you sent me the book. Okay. I love this little bookmark that you sent. On one side, it's you. And it says, one queen will reign supreme. Mm-hmm. And your dress is Queen Aurora, Court of Light. Mm-hmm. But on the other, is this a real painting?
That's really Queen Mary.
Okay. Yes, it's really Queen Mary, but this is like a real painting. Like,
that's painting.
Did you Photoshop
that's public property.
So even that brooch that she's wearing, the necklace?
Yes.
Because there's a moment in the book where Aurora's having a gift made for Queen Mary, and she has this little gnome, great artist, to create this jewel. And as she's describing it, I was like, wait, I've seen that. And I pulled this out. I was like, oh, she's wearing it. And so I just was like, did you fashion that off this painting, or did you do something on the painting?
No, I did the brooch in my head first, and then I found her portrait, and I was like, oh wow, that kind of all right, cool. That was like a good little.
You did it in your head first, and then this just happened to exist.
And then that just happened. Yeah, I hadn't found her portrait yet.
No way.
That was like a good little like.
That's wild.
Yeah, that was luck. That's pure luck.
Not luck. It's frequency. It's you were in tap with the universe.
So yeah, we were good on that.
That's
So
wild.
yeah.
That's cool. I just have now we're in the section where these are questions that I had while I was reading the book. Like, in this book, it's very interesting. The idea of these oracles who have like kind of a positive and a negative, almost like not in a negative sense, but like a photograph has a negative. It's like a copy.
Yes. Yep.
But those, correct me if I'm wrong, those weren't around in book 1.
There was one oracle. Riva was the oracle, which she's mentioned, but the Court of Light is not aware yet that there's a dark Fae version. Okay. They're just kind of coming into their own, so they're not 100% sure of the other one. So it's brought up later on in the series that there was a Fae kind of, her name's Wendora, that was kind of helping out both sides. She was neutral, and she was trying to, help the oracles out, but they're just coming into their own. As each oracle is born, they get stronger down the line. Riva was not that strong. She's just coming into it. So as each oracle is born, the next one is even stronger. So as we get to Cybella, she's stronger, and each one is going to become a little bit stronger.
And how did they come to be? Because so many of the Fae, like the Albane faction, were, correct me if I'm wrong, virtues that really bonded with like
deer.
The deer, so they became the Albane faction, and like the water spirits and gnomes. So how did oracles come to be?
The oracles are earthborn Fae. So they're Fae that have bonded, that their parents are virtues. So this is some intermingling going on.
Okay. So that's where a Fae would have mated with a human, but they showed more Fae characteristics?
Another Fae from another faction.
Oh, okay,
so it could have been two virtues, but they're born here on Earth.
Got it. Yeah.
So now we're starting to get into, now you've been on Earth for a while.
Yeah.
So different things are happening, and it's part of just being here. So the oracles are a little different, and that's why they always say, the oracles don't bend by, don't go by these rules. So it's just clairvoyancy. It's different things that are happening here. Yeah. It's different frequencies. Now they've been here. So, the mother and the father, you might have a father who bonded with a ward, but the mother stayed in full virtue status. And we have the oracle.
Okay.
So it's different things like that, or they're just, this is one of those, psychic gifted moments where you can't kind of predict how it's going to happen. Or we will learn of the Shadow Realm, which is coming up in book 4.
Like from Yu-Gi-Oh?
And that's a different... No, not quite from Yu-Gi-Oh, but it's another level. So
interesting. Okay.
Learning about
book
that.
4?
Book 4.
Oh, come on! You're putting all the good stuff in book 4.
You know what? You'll meet 2 from the Shadow Realm in book 3.
Okay.
So we're kind of getting there. I got to build it. It's layers upon layers.
Keep us coming back for more.
Yes.
Okay, one last question I got to push you on as far as characters. So. Yep. The whole book, Queen Aurora and Jarvok are respecting the treaty, and kind of, we don't hear from Jarvok for most of the book. We don't really know what's going on in the Court of Dark. Even though now the Weepers, his Weeper army, I know that I'm using all this great lingo, y'all that haven't read the book, so go read the books. These are great books. But his Weeper army now have a purpose that we don't get to see any of that enact in book 2 at least.
No, we're kind of quiet on the Weeper army because he's trying to keep those reins tight.
Yeah.
He understands that Weeper army is dangerous.
They can get out of hand real quick.
Yes.
Yeah, like they did in book 1.
He's trying to keep it. He's trying to keep those reins tight. As you'll see that, things like the plagues and stuff like that, that's where the Weepers come into play. They're great for stuff like that. Cleaning up the plagues, things like that. The Weepers come in and they eat everything. Everything's all good. They're like locusts. So he knows what he's got, but he's trying to keep it under control because once he lets them loose, he's not sure he can always pull them back. And you'll learn in the novella coming out, the Tournament of Fire, Ice, Acid, and Heart, what turns a Fae into a Weeper. Exactly how this happened.
Oh, I'm interested to hear that.
You will learn what makes a Weeper a Weeper.
Okay.
So I do keep Jarvok pulled back because the next couple books are Jarvok heavy.
Okay.
So we pulled him back a little bit in this. But the Weepers are gone but not forgotten by any means, and the Weepers will be back later on in the series.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll see it.
Okay, that's great, because I've always wondered how a Fae becomes a Weeper. It seems like such a drastic contrast between a Power Brigade Angel and a Weeper. But so they've been separate this whole book for the most part, and then they come together towards the end, have a close call of maybe destroying the treaty, but then it ends up okay. But at the end, not to spoil, I'm not going to give any specifics. I don't want to spoil the ending, but it seems like
it goes south.
It goes south so quick. So what's behind that? Because it feels like if it was going to go south, it should have gone south maybe during the first meeting, but it didn't.
Jarvok doesn't know when to just leave well enough alone. He just doesn't. He shows up, and what really should be just that one little comment that you would think wouldn't annoy anybody, when you look at it from her point of view, she's just had enough. Here she is. She enacts her vengeance on Mary, which in her eyes, she's kind of Aurora's patting herself on the back. Like, yeah, I just got it.
Yeah.
Like, I just did this for my good friend. And she is so proud of herself. And then here is this jerk who shows up, and she still can't figure out how he got past all her defenses.
Yeah, he just walks right in.
Walks right in, and he's got to say something and pick at that scab. And that just, she's already on the edge. She's so close to that edge. And all he's got to do is say one thing. And it's like, have you ever had one of those days where you're just hanging on by a thread?
Yeah.
And you're like, I just want to get home. And he just turns around and has to make one little comment, and then go, little queen, go about your business. And he says, I'm done with you now. And that's all she needed to hear was, I'm done with you. And it's like, now you're going to tell me, you're in my kingdom and you're done with me?
Right.
And it was just all she needed to hear, like, I'm tired of everybody judging me. I'm trying to do the best. And she just has a meltdown of just, no, you're not done with, you're not going to tell me how to do my job and show up in my castle and tell me I didn't do good enough. Who the hell are you?
Right.
And she just decides, no. And he's so dismissive of her feelings that she's like, I'm not having this. And I think part of it is that he has never truly stood up to him. She's always had people around her to be like, okay, do this now. Now go say this and go do that. And she's always been like, okay, yeah, all right, that's what I'm going to do. Good idea. But this is her. And to her, it's just another person she's lost. It's everything. It's just all adding up. And she's just had enough that she's like, I'm not going to stand here and take this anymore. And I think it's something we can all relate to. I mean, how many times have we been told, you're just not good enough today?
Right.
She doesn't want to take it, so she finally
hear it on
decides,
the wrong day.
Yeah, like at any other moment, it might not have bothered her. She might have been able to just be like, get out. But she just, she just thought she'd done something good for Arthur, and she's giving him something like, hey, here you go, like, and he's so happy, and he leaves happy. And she's like, I did something good.
Right.
And then here's Jarvok, like, and then he makes these judgments, and she's like, oh no. And it just sends her over the edge that she's like, now you and I are going to fight this out, and I'm done.
So you have these two ultra powerful beings, one of light, one of dark. One's got a dragon. One can control the elements, can master the wind, and they're about to have at it. And
they're going to it's a barroom brawl. I mean, it's like official. We are going to just fight this out right now.
And is that where book 3 picks up? Is that brawl?
Book 3 picks up exactly that moment. Exactly when Jarvok steps up and says, we are ending this right now. That's exactly exactly as it starts. It starts exactly when he says, "Let's go," and she just is like, "All right, let's fighting this out. Let's go."
Oof. Well, I'm excited
There's
to see
no-
what happens next.
Well, it just so happens I'm holding the next one right here for you.
Let's make you big. From the Ashes. Who's that on the cover?
That is Desdemona with her Harbinger sword, and that is Vapor Dragor in all his glory standing behind her.
Oh, damn. Oh, damn.
So he is ready to go, and they're ready to rock.
That's awesome. I'm excited. And if you guys are getting excited, go ahead and use that command, book, and you can pick up your own copy. That'll take you straight to the link of book 2, but you can easily pick up 1 or 3 there. And focus, you can see the lovely Danielle M. Orsino on the cover of her book, dressed as Queen Aurora. With which dragon is this?
That's Dragor
Okay.
normally, but on book 3 we have him in his vapor form.
He can turn into a vapor form?
Him and Jarvok can meld and become one.
Like a freaking Power Ranger?
Yes.
That's
pretty
amazing. An organic Power Ranger with a
Organic
living,
Power
breathing
Ranger.
mech.
Yep. It's a little crazy.
That's
He's
awesome.
the only one that you can do it with. So yeah, I gave you, a little. I had to give my little nods where I could,
Yeah, there's always something else.
and that was it.
It always gets escalated. Each book, the power gets stronger.
It's just Jarvok and Dragor are the only ones who can do that. But I do have a carnivorous eating butterfly. I have a carnivorous butterfly in book 5 that we meet. But I had to go up 1.
Of course. It's just
Yeah.
it's like an
Sometimes.
anime. It's like any good anime. It just keeps getting more intense, more
Anime
intense,
is
more
like the
intense.
next one.
Oh, you're gonna write an
I would love
anime
to
next.
see this as an anime. I've written the script for book 1 for
Oh,
an
you're gonna
anime.
turn
I
these
have.
books into an anime?
That's our goal.
Shut
So I've
your
written the
mouth.
script. I finished the
Shut
script, the pilot.
Up. That would be so fucking cool. And there
Yep,
were
I've done
moments. I think it was the first moment when Aurora was in her private chambers, and I think she was unleashing on King Henry. And like the way you described it, I instantly just saw it in anime form, and she was just like whoosh, and this wind everywhere, and her eyes glowed, and her wings popped out, and I was like, this would be dope anime.
That's my, from your lips to God's ears, the universe's ears. It's just, that's what I'd like. So I finished the pilot script for the anime. I added the prequel and
Really?
put that all in, a prologue, I should say. Yes.
Do you
we
have like
added
a
that
studio in mind?
We're gonna be shopping it around.
Okay.
But there's a little like small amounts of buzz, some things, but we're waiting, we're testing, but I've finished at least the pilot episode and written it out. I've got some music in there.
You guys,
Seeing.
this
So
we didn't
we'll
talk about
see.
this. She has been keeping this close to the chest. You've never told me about this.
No, I just did it, so we got to get like a little bit of buzz from the community. We've had some reviewers say like this would make Netflix take note, like things like
Yeah.
that. So and a couple of people have said this would make a cool anime. So we're trying to kind of get it out there and see. But
please, please.
that would be my dream.
That would be so cool,
is
Danielle.
is to do that, because I can't see it any other way. And even when I wrote it, that's as I was like writing it, I always saw it in animation format. It's not like I ever pictured live action. Maybe because I was just like, oh, these dragons would cost a fortune.
Right.
But like, and the people who I pictured as the bishops, they, half of them, like I always wanted David Bowie as, Kair. I was like, if I had my choice, I was like, okay, Sting would be Geddes, Kair would be David Bowie. I'm like, Andrew Garfield would be Arwen. I'm like, and
Ooh,
I would want Orlando Bloom as Bishop Ward, because Bloom would never play like an asshole.
Yeah.
And I'm like, then that's who I would want. And like, so half the people I would want, They're not lining up. Like
this is
David
a fun
Bowie,
game. Keep going. Who would play
but
Aurora?
that's who I'd want. Aurora, to be honest, I want Zoe Kravitz.
Okay, help me out.
Catwoman.
Ooh. Okay, that would be cool.
And then for Jarvok, I know everybody says Momoa. I got you on that, but I'm going to give you somebody different.
He's so likable.
Just hear me out on this. Idris Elba.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah.
Because he's just intimidating.
He is. Everything he does. Even in the office.
He's just like, you just don't want to mess with him.
No.
Like, who wants to mess with him?
Yeah. That's like, a great idea. Now I'm just trying to picture the white hair on Idris Elba.
Right. And then you immediately go to Henry Cavill from The Witcher. Like, you just got to go to him for, and I get it. Trust me, I wouldn't kick him out. But,
right.
And for Zion, I always thought I'd want somebody. There's a couple guys I've always kind of seen, but I've thought about, and I can't think, the guy who played from Snake Eyes, Henry Golding. We got Crazy Rich Asians. I always thought of him.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's who I always thought. And then Priyanka Chopra was another person I thought for Asa.
Mm-hmm. Help me out.
So Nick Jonas's wife.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I thought of her for that's who I thought of for Asa.
Okay.
So I had like a bunch of crazy people in my head.
Yeah. I'd love to see this movie happen, though.
And then I always thought give Drew Barrymore something because she inspired, Aurora so many times. I'm like, but she doesn't want to act anymore. So,
Yeah,
but
she's too
I
busy
always
on her
kind
TV
of
show.
like, because she's got a talk show and now she's like, take me seriously. And I'm like, come on, Drew, just do something. But I'm like, maybe we could get her to voice Aurora. And then,
do you want of course, that Dream, really, though?
Oh, she's got a good voice.
Does
but
she?
Then Dream Gal as Desdemona.
Ooh, hell yeah.
Because everybody would expect her to be Aurora. So then you throw her in as Desdemona and nobody sees that coming.
Yeah.
You see?
See, y'all don't even know who we're talking about. You got to go get the books. You got to learn who these people are.
Everybody's like, oh, who are, what are you saying?
It's all going to make sense.
Yeah. So, that's what I would do.
Okay.
That's the dream.
Oh, there's one question that I forgot to ask that we're talking about who would play who. Who do you feel you would put your personal personality into? Which character?
Probably. I'm probably a little more Desdemona than anybody.
Okay. And I could see that because you have like a martial art background. You're spicy. You're honest.
I'm a little more standoffish than anybody. But I can be a little naive when it comes to people like Aurora. I can be a little too trusting. Like once you're in the inner circle, I can be a little too trusting, as I've learned a lot this year. So I'm a little bit of a mixture, I would think.
Yeah.
There are times I think I should be a little more like Jarvok, but
right.
I think we could all learn a lot from Jarvok. But
honestly, I gained a lot more respect for Jarvok in this book. And even though he wasn't a big focal point, he said some things. I'm like, yeah, man, makes sense. He's not a bad dude.
Yeah,
he just
and I
cutthroat
find I
for
write
what he
better
loves.
male characters than I do. Like, as much as I went in there being like, I'm going to write strong female characters and girl power, I'm like, I like my guys better. It's just one of those things. But probably a little more like Desdemona.
Can I tell you? And this didn't happen because when I read the first book, we really didn't chat like this face to face. So just over text, whatever you sound like. But after we first met this way in your first Geek Out Sesh, and then I read the second book, the voice that like screamed out, I was like, holy shit, this is Danielle. It's Serena.
That's funny. Serena is my best friend from high school, Jennifer. 100%. Like, that's myself and Jen in high school. Like, that's who Serena is. Her and I together. Like,
and she's probably so much a
those
piece of you at this point.
oh yeah.
Yeah.
Jen and I talk every week, and we still laugh about the same dumb shit. It's those conversations on the beach, everything are taken directly from our conversations as kids. And I've known her since 6th grade. So it's all the same. I mean, going to New Kids on the Block concerts.
Hell yeah.
My age. You know, everything, going to prom, all of it, all of our dumb schemes, you know, convincing each other, yeah, this is totally a great plan. Yeah, we'll totally get into the bar. Yeah, that's us. Just all of it, you know. Her, like, I could be going down in flames and she's there with pom-poms going, this is, you're doing so good. Oh my God, such a good idea. Yeah, that's totally her. Everything.
And that makes sense why you just screamed out in Serena's character. She just was like such the down-to-earth character. Like, she just spoke things so plainly, not like royally or queenly like Aurora had been doing, that I'm just like, that's Danielle. She's just straight shooting. She's just saying things like it is. She's Serena. Oh my God, I bet she wrote herself as Serena. And that's interesting that you didn't even.
No, that's me and Jen. If I needed to hear something like no BS, I ask her, and she's probably the person that I think everybody has this type of person, the one person who holds you accountable. Like, you know, the face you put on for people, you know? And then there's that one friend where you're like, okay, this is what I did. All right, let me just tell you.
Yeah,
and they're just like, why did you do it? And you're like, this is why I did it, you know? And they tell you. That's Jen. Like, she holds me accountable. I hold her accountable. There's no BS. It's just, this is it. This is what I did.
Right.
Or what I didn't do. Or this person treated me this way. And, you know, she's the one who's being like, that bitch. Why don't, you know, blah, blah, blah. And she'll be like, but you know what you did. You know, like, she's just that person. There's no trappings. There's no nothing. You know, we always make the joke, like, is it time to bring the chassis into the shop? You know, like when it's time to go for Botox or something, I'll be like, it's time to bring the chassis into the shop. She's like, send me the picture and I'll tell you. And I'm like, okay, good. You know, like, it's time for honesty and whatever. And, you know, I was not one of the cool kids in high school. Jen was. Jen's gorgeous. Like,
she blonde?
I was not one of those. Yes.
Like Serena?
Blonde, green eyes. She looks like Jennifer Aniston. Like, she was always hot.
Serena's just the mermaid on your upper left right corner, or upper left corner, over your left shoulder over here.
Yes,
that's Serena. Yeah,
that's Serena.
Just so y'all have someone we're talking about.
You know, like, she's just, you know, she was always that hot friend in high school.
Yeah.
You know, that you were just like, if you hang next to her, you either your hotness factor goes up just a smidge because you're next to her, and then it goes down a bunch because you're next to her. You know, that's it. Like, you know, it's one of those situations. But she's like the sweetest person where she's beautiful on the inside and outside. But like, we've just been, like I said, since 6th grade, I've known her. So we just get each other, and I mean, I love her, but she'll tell it like it is. And there's no like, let me tell you nice. No, she's just like, why are you wearing that? Just straight face, like, what the fuck? What is this? What are you doing?
And that makes so much sense looking at Serena and Aurora's relationship, is they have that. And in the book one, that's one of the, after she becomes queen, that's one of the few places where she goes down to the lake and sees Serena, and she just is completely honest with no guards up like she does every other time in court. So that's really cool. I love that. I was wrong, but I like your answer even better.
It's a little bit of everything
there,
but it's been like that, and I carried her through a lot of the books, even in other characters. But yeah, some of the crap we've gotten into, it leaks in. It leaks in throughout it, and you know, she's, even when I wrote the books, I was like, look, I'm writing a book, and she was, you know, I'm like, here it comes, and she's like, that's awesome. She's like, with all the voices you have in your head, she's like, you totally should be writing a book. I'm like, oh, okay, cool.
Well, then I definitely should then.
I was like, all right, cool. She's like, yeah, no, you're strange. That works.
You're strange.
Awesome. Yeah.
Everyone needs a friend that just calls you out as being strange.
Yeah. She's like, you're smart. But yeah, no, that makes sense. She's like, cool. So I'm like, great. Awesome. Let's go.
That's awesome. Well, guys, I know that we're running close to the end of our Geek Out sesh, and I just was too interested in keeping talking about the book that I know I kind of had a game planned, but I was like, well, screw that. I'm just going to keep talking about the book. So sorry if you tuned in for the game. I'm sorry, we're not playing it. We just talked. But again, please do use command book to get her book, or just use command, not Fae, oh god, Fae. Just go follow her on Instagram and follow along the journey and join be one of the 12,000 followers over on her Instagram channel to this, just loving the shit out of what she's making. And you've got so much more coming down the pipe. Like she said it earlier, if you missed it, we're talking about book 2. She's already published book 3, and she's currently working on book 9, plus some other novellas, plus this might become an anime, plus we're gonna get Gal Gadot in the movie. It's gonna be amazing.
I have oracle cards coming out, actually.
Oracle cards? What do you mean oracle cards? Like tarot cards?
Yes. My dad is going to be in it. My dad, who inspired Hoggle, is actually with my Uncle Ronnie, who is Marco from book 1, has agreed to pose for the oracle cards, which for me is a very big deal because my dad was afraid he was going to look like Super Mario Brothers. And so I have changed Hoggle from overalls to a blacksmith apron because my dad refused to put the overalls on. So we're changing it to a blacksmith apron so he doesn't look like Mario. Which I have to, I got to concede on something. So yeah, my dad is going to star in the oracle cards, and we are coming out with that hopefully by the end of the year. We're doing the photo shoots right now as we speak.
And these would be like tarot cards that you can purchase and use.
Yes, they're oracle cards, and they'll actually go along with the book, because once you get into book 5, the oracles have their own cards that will happen during a reading, and they will go along with it. So we are working on that right now as we speak. And we've shot probably about 10 or 12 of them already. And my dad will be in them as well.
That's amazing.
So I'm kind of excited to see my dad as Hoggle and my uncle Ronnie as Marco.
You're so far ahead of the game. Here we are talking about book 2, but you're like planning on book 5 that hasn't even been published, and you're ready to have merch available. You're the antithesis
I'm kind of excited about that.
to what FGBG is. So I'm honored to know you.
I don't have a t-shirt though. You have a t-shirt. I don't have a t-shirt.
Well, we got to get on
you're
that.
You're ahead of me. Yeah, I'm working on that.
We'll get our
trolls balls or something. I'm gonna have.
There you. Oh yes, hell yeah. I love that's the phrase that everyone says when they're pissed. Trolls balls.
Trolls balls. I had to come up with something. Goblin's ass and trolls balls.
Yeah.
It's all like a curse with, Damn it to Lucifer, trolls balls, goblin's ass. That's all I got.
Well, hey, as we are kind of wrapping things up, y'all, in the chat, if you have anybody that you'd like to take this energy to raid, please suggest them below. Otherwise, I'm going to make an executive decision here in a minute. But my last question, at least on stream, because I might have some more off. What is the message that you want people to walk away from book 2 with?
I think the biggest message I want them to walk away with is to trust in yourself, which is what Awin was trying to tell Marjorie, was to just trust in yourself and believe that any situation can be changed with enough self-love and belief. And I think that was the biggest thing. And obviously compassion, which was Awin's message to Aurora, was to have a little compassion for whomever crosses their path. And that was the overall message of book 2, compassion, which I think we could all use a little bit more of in this world.
Which is exactly what Awin tells Aurora with his last breath.
Yes, compassion. And I think, like I said, I think we could all use a little more of that.
Yeah, I think you're right. Well, Danielle, this has been amazing. Again, thanks for being my first returning guest on a Geek Out Sesh.
Thank you so much for having me. I hope I did not bore all the geeks out there who were listening to me go on and on about a book. And they're not like, oh my God, she's killing me. I hope not.
No!
So thank you for joining me.
You were the last thing from boring. If anything, I hope it just made all of you want to go buy her book, and as you should. And if you are enjoying tonight, and if you have enjoyed tonight, please come back and join us next Monday when we talk to a channel, no lie, called For Nerds by Nerds. They were it was right there, and I had to. I couldn't not. I was like, will you come on my show? Let's talk about you.
Get out of here, really?
So come back for our negative For Nerds by Nerds, which is what my mom thinks my channel's called anyway.
Wow.
So we do this every Monday. We talk about cosplay. We talk about writing books. We talk about video games. We just geek out to geek out. And if you are looking for a safe place to do that and just some fun people to hang out with, then please join the Discord. And there's tons of people here in the chat that are ready to hang out with you whenever you have all this energy that you just have to unload onto someone. We are there for you. And then, of course, on Wednesdays, you can watch T as he paints minis. He's got a really great, huge dragon he's going to be painting this week that I'm excited about. And then Thursdays is our ongoing pre-recorded D&D session. It's pre-recorded for content quality, but we will be in the chat hanging out with you. And I think it's going really well. I'm excited on how it's been going. I think our characters are going to end up at their first port, so that should be exciting. But we're going to get ready to raid. I know I had it going, but I canceled it because I had too much to say. B-deck. Is that it? Is that it? Did I do it right? Okay, there we go. But as always, I am Boser. Who are you? Oh no, she froze.
Oh no, I'm here.
Oh, she's there.
I got it now.
There she is. As always, I'm Boser. Who are you?
I'm Danielle.
Yes! And until next time, you just keep
Geeking out.
There it is. Good night.